Hello there, this is Alex, and welcome to my full review of the action RPG Mortal Shell. There is more to nailing a proper Souls-like than just having brutal stamina-based combat, dropping a retrievable currency on death, having an odd amount of doors that can only be opened from one side, and being constantly confused by what any NPC is rambling on about. Luckily, the somewhat small Mortal Shell team seems to realize this, going that much needed extra step beyond just the face value fundamentals, crafting a faithful spiritual successor to its obvious inspiration instead of just a misguided imitation of it. Combat in Mortal Shell is responsive but also weighty, deep but also somewhat straightforward at the same time. You can of course flail away with your sequence of basic attacks, but there is definitely extra depth in there for those who choose to seek it out, not to mention the intricacies of the main standout mechanic, your ability to harden your shell. This functions similar to a block on a very basic level, freezing you in place to absorb a hit or two, but the ways in which you can use this to extend attack animations, continue combos uninterrupted, and a few other really cool tricks, makes this one of the most flexible singular gameplay mechanics I've come across in quite a while. You also have the ability to parry and riposte with your Tarnished Seal, which has numerous functions, but the most basic one is to use it to heal. Using your Resolve resource, you can earn back health by correctly timing a parry, which is a pretty brutal risk-reward healing method which some might struggle with, but there are also consumables you can munch on instead that will heal you over time. These edibles, like the mushrooms, respawn on a timer spread out in every area, which do give some hope to those who might suck at parrying. Also, shells die twice, and you get one free resurrect to full HP after you're ejected from your shell if you manage to get back to it before getting hit. This also means that your own deaths can help you out in the future by providing a one-time health boost for when you choose to consume yourself. Overall, on the combat side, I absolutely loved the feel and impact of it, and it was fun to find that extra layer of depth that was hiding. Mortal Shell is mostly completely non-linear with how you approach your gland hunting expeditions, starting you in a fairly large main hub area and letting you go aimlessly down any of the three paths you find. In theory, they are all pretty equally balanced difficulty-wise, although I did find one to be vastly harder than the others. Each of these routes will lead you into a sprawling dungeon-like separate area where you must fight your way through to a climactic boss fight at the end. Each of these three separate areas have a new weapon that can be found at the start of them, and you'll find the main upgrades for that specific weapon type tucked away somewhere down that same path. If you, for example, want to use the giant longsword and get its ice abilities as soon as possible, no problem, seek out to fully explore that region at the very start, it's up to you. There are only 4 total melee weapons in the game, which is pretty low, but they all feel distinct and alter your playstyle a decent amount. You can level these up with higher attack stats with hard-to-find resources, but outside of that, there is no armor to equip or upgrade, or stats to micromanage. There's just the 4 character classes you can inhabit called shells. One is a jack-of-all-trades with pretty even stats, one is more of a glass cannon with super high stamina and low health, another is a tanky beefcake with high health and low stamina, and last, one is fairly balanced with a higher focus on using and accumulating the Resolve resource, acting like somewhat of a caster class minus the traditional spells. Each of these shells have their own small skill tree of unlocks which do improve them in more lateral ways, often not shifting their core stats. This takes away much of the potential of creating a unique character build, as you will likely have your favorite one weapon and shell out of the 4, and will likely have them both maxed out with all their possible upgrades a little over halfway through the game. For the most part, this no armor or stat allocation system makes it so you'll be taking the same amount of damage at the start of the game as you will be at the end. However, this more streamlined approach where you don't need to concern yourself with all that extra character minutia does allow for the general difficulty curve to be more meticulously balanced, since the team doesn't have to guess what your armor and stat values might just happen to be at that point in the game. This makes for a more even challenge all throughout, and since difficulty balance is often so horribly botched in games of this style, this ultimately might have been the right call for the smaller scope of this game. Your first playthrough will likely take you around 10 to 15 hours to complete, hence the price point at half the normal AAA cost. But New Game Plus awaits those who want to continually improve their weapons and take on an ever-growing challenge. There are also some optional, somewhat hidden penalties one can take on as well, which will truly test your combat prowess and your patience. The less is more approach of Mortal Shell, trimming the elements that often makes everything crumble if not done perfectly, works quite well at delivering a very satisfying, tough but fair journey that doesn't try to pull too many cheap game design tricks on you. Some of the low points of Mortal Shell, like the light RPG elements, somewhat short length, and sometimes janky animations and AI, didn't really take away all that much for me because the mediums and highs were really that good. The combat is outstanding from beginning to end, doling out new mechanics at just the right pace, the labyrinth-like level design is full of things to find and secrets to discover, and the dark atmosphere was engrossing and also memorable. Out of the hundreds of attempts over the last decade, Mortal Shell now stands out as one of the best Souls-likes out there, kicking off what I hope is a full-on future franchise. Those were my general thoughts from playing through Mortal Shell, and for those of you still here, let's take a quick look at the game's control and how it feels to play. Movement control and attack aiming is surprisingly responsive for a game of this style, and you don't often get stuck in animations you didn't plan to or attack in directions you didn't want to, for the most part. The harden ability is just a tap or hold of the trigger during any animation you're in if it's not in cooldown. Impressive what all this can be used for with just one button press. On the shoulder button you have your parry, which comes out quickly, pretty straightforward, and then by pressing in either the triggers or both of the shoulder buttons at the same time, you will perform one of your two special abilities for your weapon if you have the resolve to power them. That's pretty much all of the basics, but if you want to see a little more of the extra depth to all this, I will have my advanced combat guide linked to in the outro of this video if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details. Let me know your thoughts on Mortal Shell from what I showed off in this, or if you've been playing it, let me know what you think. As always, this has been Alex from Boomstick Gaming, and thanks for giving this a watch.